Welcome to this edition of Master Classes. Today's topic will be thoracic aortic interventions, how to preserve the spinal cord. In the next 25 minutes or so, we'll be dealing with this topic and interventions for the surgical repair of descending thoracic aortic and thoracoabdominal aortic aneurysms involve a complex multidisciplinary perioperative management strategies. Surgical repair of thoracic aortic aneurysm and thoracoabdominal aortic aneurysm is a challenging procedure that carries high rate of perioperative complications and 30-day mortality of 5 to 10%. Patient having a successful repair of the aortic aneurysm. Spinal cord injury is one of the most devastating complications after thoracoabdominal aneurysm repair and thoracic aortic aneurysm repair, which may affect anywhere from 5 to 20% of the patients, leading to paraplegia or paraparesis. This is a social burden and increases the hospital stay and adds to the excessive resource utilization. Despite recent advances, major surgical challenges remain because of typical patient is elderly with multiple significant comorbidities. The risks of spinal cord, spinal, mesenteric, renal, and lower extremity ischemia are significant because of thromboembolism, loss of collateral vascular networks, temporary interruption of blood flow, and reperfusion injury. If you look at the mortality and paraplegia after thoracoabdominal aortic aneurysm, it also depends upon the extent of the aneurysm, and the greatest problem or the greatest incidence of operative mortality or permanent paraplegia is in the extent 2 and 3. The thoracoabdominal aortic aneurysms are classified by the use of Crawford classification. 4 types are described. The extent 1 starts from the left subclavian artery and goes on till the abdominal aorta, but ends above the renal arteries. The class 2 starts similar to what is in class 1 but extends up to the iliac bifurcation. Class 3 is the aneurysm which starts somewhere middle in the thoracic aorta and extends up to the iliac bifurcation. Class 4 is confined to the entire abdominal aorta. Coming to the techniques of surgery here, basically the 4 types of surgery can be offered to these patients. One is cut and sew technique, where the aneurysm is clamped above and below the extent of the aneurysm, and then the aneurysm is cut open and a graft is placed inside, and then the aneurysm is repaired. This is the simplistic technique, but it involves the problem of proximal hypertension, and there is a time limit within which it has to be done. The time usually quoted is 30 minutes. So, within 30 minutes, the grafting has to be completed. And it is also associated with bleeding problems. Coming to the type 2 technique, where we put a shunt proximal to the aneurysm, and this shunt takes away blood from the proximal ascending aorta to the distal aorta beyond the aneurysm. So, here you are maintaining the perfusion to the lower extremities and also trying to control the hypertension to some extent, which occurs as a result of cross clamping of the aorta proximal to the aneurysm. The third technique is the use of left atrial femoral bypass, left heart bypass to be precise, where we do not really need an oxygenator, but the blood is taken away from the left atrium by cannulating the upper lobe pulmonary veins, and the oxygenated blood is taken away and then pumped back into the arterial system down much below the extent of the aneurysm. This technique is also useful, and the last one is the use of complete bypass, which is shown in the D panel of the picture. If you look at the incidence of permanent paraplegia, it has a similar incidence both in the open surgical procedures and endovascular procedures. And for us to understand why the paraplegia occurs or the spinal cord damage occurs, we need to know some bit about the spinal cord blood supply. The spinal cord is supplied by the anterior spinal artery, which is a branch of the vertebral artery, and this supplies the anterior 2/3 of the spinal cord, and the posterior 1/3, which contain the sensory components, sensory tracts and the spinothalamic tracts. It is supplied by the two posterior spinal arteries, one on either side, and there are extensive network of collaterals, and this is augmented by the posterior radicular arteries, which are branches of the aorta. And importantly, there is a big radicular branch which arises anywhere from T8 to L2 level, which is named as arteria magna or the artery of Adam Kivis, which is a large radicular branch, and this supplies the anterior spinal artery. The Adam-Kivis artery has been described as early as 1881, and this is the first report of the blood supply to the spinal cord by Adam-Kivis, who postulated that the spinal cord derives its blood supply from the by the anterior and posterior spinal arteries, and this is augmented by the arteria magna at the level of T9 to L2 vertebra, and this is responsible for the supply of blood to the spinal cord, especially in the thoracolumbar region. And this is the diagrammatic representation of his postulation. And now we know that it is a bit simplistic because there is inter-individual variability of blood supply, and the pattern may not be exactly what is described by Adam-Kivis. Now we know that the spinal cord is supplied by the anterior spinal artery and the posterior spinal artery, and the mechanism leading to ischemia and infarction of the spinal cord are complex and multifactorial, and this is because of the fact that there is inter-individual variability in supply of blood to the spinal cord. If you look at the risk factors which predict the occurrence of spinal cord injury in patients undergoing thoracic aortic aneurysm surgery or thoraco-abdominal aortic aneurysm surgery, these can be classified typically into preoperative factors and intraoperative or surgical factors. Among the preoperative factors, presence of diabetes mellitus, heart disease, renal dysfunction, prior thoracic aortic aneurysm repair, and anemia are the important reasons. And the intraoperative factors, the extent of the thoraco-abdominal aortic aneurysm is the most important determinant, and other factors are mentioned here. Hypothermia is protective, and the algorithm to implement spinal cord protective strategies in thoracic aortic aneurysm and thoraco-abdominal aortic aneurysm are shown here, The important components of this is that in high risk patients, especially if the extent of the aneurysm is large, we have to consider the insertion of prophylactic cerebrospinal fluid drainage and use of mean arterial pressure of above 80 millimeters and monitoring techniques to be able to detect and prevent spinal cord injury. This has to be continued in the post-operative period depending upon the um, depending upon if there is any evidence of spinal cord injury or not. The lumbar cerebrospinal fluid drainage is performed by insertion of silicone elastomer ventriculostomy catheter using a 14 gauge 2A needle at the L3 to L4 vertebral interspace. The catheter is advanced into the subarachnoid space and securely fastened to the skin at approximately 15 centimeter to prevent catheter movement while the patient is anticoagulated for surgical purposes. Usually, this is placed about 24 hours before the actual surgical procedure. Typically in the evening before the contemplated and 1 day prior to the contemplated surgery. The cerebrospinal fluid is drained uh, to maintain a constant CSF pressure of about 10 centimeters. If the CSF pressure exceeds 10 centimeters, there is automatic drainage of the cerebrospinal fluid from the intrathecal space. This is a typical setup which is used using a pressure transducer. Do we need to have the reimplantation of spinal cord arteries during the repair of these aneurysms? This paper illustrates that with monitoring of the motor end plate potentials and somatosensory evoked potentials, without reimplantation, as many as 8 to 10 intercostal and lumbar arteries can be sacrificed, resulting in acceptably low rates of immediate and delayed paraplegia. This experience suggested that routine surgical implantation of segmental vessels is not indicated, and with evolving understanding of spinal cord perfusion, endovascular repair of the entire thoracic aorta can be ultimately possible without spinal cord injury. These are the results in about 100 patients. About 8 pairs of segmental arteries were sacrificed with a paraplegia rate of only 2%. And this study shows that as long as we are restricting the number of segmental arteries which are compromised or sacrificed, we may still get away with no spinal cord injury or ischemia. The second concept which we need to understand is that of a spinal cord perfusion pressure, which is the difference between the collateral network pressure in the arteries supplying the spinal cord minus the cerebrospinal fluid pressure or the central venous pressure, whichever is greater. This pressure can be monitored by looking at the perfusion pressure in the spinal cord arteries by direct cannulation or by indirect means. So, how do you monitor this? For this, we have to have monitors which are typically non-invasive, preferably, and they are real time, and they tell us about the perfusion, and it can be used both intraoperatively and postoperatively, and they are relatively easy to use. Here we have the somatosensory evoked potentials which can be used intraoperatively, but we need a technician to be present in the theater with the relevant equipment to monitor the somatosensory evoked potentials. If we opt to choose motor end plate potentials, It can be used intraoperatively and postoperatively. Patient is at the point of time not paralyzed, using skeletal muscle relaxants, and the anesthetic is maintained by infusion of propofol, or we can monitor the spinal cord perfusion pressure, and we can also look at near infrared spectral photometry using the NIRS monitoring techniques as is shown in this picture, and we can measure the blood flow using laser technology. Here is a picture where we are showing the NIRS sensor pads placed onto the thoracic thoracic paraspinal space in thoracic vertebra, thoracic area, and in the lumbar area, and the respective saturation is shown in the uh, panel on the right hand bottom corner. This has been validated in experimental animals using pig model. The the laser Doppler flow probe has been inserted in the spinal arteries, and the sensor externally monitoring non-invasively the collateral network near infrared spectroscopy is correlated with the laser technology as is shown in this picture, and the thoracic vertebra level is T5 to T6 and the lumbar level is L2 to L3, and using this technology the oxygenation and the flow were correlating with each other as is shown in this graph. So it is surmised that based on this experimental model that the flow can be derived or assumed to be influenced or influencing the oxygenation, and hence oxygenation as measured non-invasively using the NIRS technology can tell us indirectly about the flow in the spinal arteries. The other technology or other concept which is being developed now is the use of minimally invasive segmental artery coil embolization. This is called MISASE, where the segmental arteries are coil embolized in the catheterization lab, and this leads to blockage of the segmental arteries, and in about 5 days time there is development of collaterals, extensive collaterals in the paraspinous region which will protect the spinal cord during the thoracoabdominal aortic surgery. This picture is showing the blockage or the collateral embolization of the segmental arteries, and there is evidence in the literature to show that this technology can eliminate the problem of spinal cord ischemia. In this minimally invasive selective segmental artery endovascular coil embolization, there is preconditioning of the paraspinal arteries, and it is clinically feasible and may eventually eliminate the ischemic spinal cord injury to enable safe open or endovascular repair of the extensive thoracoabdominal aortic aneurysms, and this will prevent paraplegia altogether in the near future. And this report shows that this technique is able to prevent the spinal cord injury in these patients. In conclusion, when we deal with patients with thoracic aortic aneurysm and thoracoabdominal aortic aneurysms, the following aspects have to be considered. Identification of patients at high risk of spinal cord injury depending upon the type of aneurysm and the extent of aneurysm, and careful review of the preoperative data including the magnetic resonance imaging techniques to identify the pattern of collateral blood supply and blood supply to the spinal cord, use of prophylactic cerebrospinal fluid drainage, monitoring for ischemia, either the near infrared spectroscopy or any other technique which is suitable and available in a given center, maintaining the internal environment, especially with regards to hemoglobin and the mean arterial blood pressure. Use of spinal cord protective agents is not very well established, and the reimplantation of spinal arteries can be considered in extensive aneurysms, and ultimately the use of minimally invasive segmental artery coil embolization is a new technique, evolving technique. We need to wait to see the results, and then if it is appropriate, if it proves to be good, we need to adapt that technology. Thank you very much.